Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today, I want to take you back to June 5th, 1864. We're going to go into Virginia, into the Shenandoah Valley, to the Battle of Piedmont. This is a little remembered battle. It was known in the history books for really two things. First, the death of the Confederate commander, William E. Jones, known as Grumble Jones, well, character trait. And the other thing the battle is known for is the rout of Jones's forces. Forgotten in that battle, the role of a Union general, a Union officer who was in charge of the cavalry in Major General David Hunter's Army of the Shenandoah. He's the soldier pictured here, and he's Major General Julius H. Stahel, or Stahel, Stahel. During the battle, a New York Times correspondent was in the vicinity observing the action from a safe distance, but close enough to pick up what was going on during the fight. The New York Times correspondent leaves behind his eyewitness account of what's going on. And of course, this is also based on interviews with fellow officers and soldiers right after the event. So, according to the correspondent, there's a hot spot, and Stahel forms his men behind the cover of a hill, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Now, he dismounts a portion of his command and leads them on foot against the rebels' right flank, and then he sends another portion around to the enemy's left, sort of in a pincer movement here. As he advances into the wooded area, the bullets begin to fly. One, and he's out in the lead here, one of those bullets rips through the left shoulder of his uniform and grazes his skin, a minor wound, a flesh wound. A second bullet then hits him in the same place. And this one hits him smack on, but it doesn't break the skin. It leaves a really painful contusion. Now, Stahel turns over command and he goes back to seek medical treatment. And I want to pause here for just a second. Here's his general. He's been hit by 2 bullets. He's in considerable pain, and he's now gone back for treatment. It's possible that he could have decided, listen, I've had enough. He's turned over command to another officer, and he's going to call it a day. But he doesn't. A half an hour later, he returns to his command. His wound has been dressed, and his arm is now in a sling. The Times correspondent says this quote, he was loudly cheered by the men of his command. So there's that moment there where he jumped back in the game. He's wounded. He comes back with a sling, obviously still in some pain, and returns to lead his men in battle. In fact, David Hunter, in his after-action report, he says of Stahel, he displayed excellent qualities of coolness and gallantry. And for that final happy result, the country is much indebted to his services. Now, let's take a look at Stahel and get a better understanding of what was behind this man's character. What did he have in his character that made him stand up to the enemy forces not once, but twice in the same battle? Well, when you know his backstory, I think it becomes a little bit more understandable, a little bit more interesting, because he was in a situation about 15 years earlier and he lost. That happened in Eastern Europe. In fact, Stahel was born in Hungary in 1825. And when he was a young man, late teenager, he became a lieutenant in the Austrian army, worked his way up to lieutenant. He left before around 1848 to join the Hungarian independence movement. In fact, he was a Hungarian, and disenchanted, looking for more opportunity and more freedom for his home country. He left the army and he joins the freedom movement, the independence movement led by Louis Kossuth. Again, that's in 1848. It did not go well. The movement, the revolution failed, and Stahel left. He fled the country. There were rumors that they were going to capture the officers and imprison them, and worse, execution. So he takes off. He leaves his home country. And in fact, he changes his name to Stahel at that time. His real name is, and I'm going to pronounce this probably badly, Gyula Samwald. Changes his name, completely changes his name, goes to London for a little while, and then heads to the United States, like so many freedom fighters in Europe, looking for a second chance, looking for a fresh start. He comes to the United States. That's in 1856. Gets to the United States, doesn't go any further than New York, and becomes a newspaper reporter. I found no evidence in his career previously that he had journalistic talent, but there he is. He's in New York, an ex-soldier, an ex-revolutionary, and now a newspaper man in New York City. Of course, a few years later, we have a war in this country, a war for freedom, a revolution. And there he is, Stahel. He's got an opportunity to serve again, so he does. He helps organize a regiment, the 8th New York Infantry. He distinguishes himself in his first battle. That's Bull Run in July of 1861. He's there, that first big battle in the East, the battle that gave everybody a pretty clear idea that this wasn't going to be a short war. So Stahel goes on to participate in numerous actions with the Army of the Potomac. He eventually rises to general and then brigade and division command, and that takes him into the Shenandoah Valley in the Battle of Piedmont in June of 1864. He continues to serve. He does great service, and after the war, he's honored in the diplomatic corps, becoming a consul to various locations, and continues to serve his adopted country. He's now won a war. He's participated in a winning war. He's got the freedom. He helped his country win freedom. And now he's in the diplomatic corps, carrying forth the name of the United States to different countries, different assignments. There's one more honor that he gets, and that's in 1893, almost 30 years after the Battle of Piedmont, when his courage, his gallantry, you might say that second chance for freedom happens there, and he stands up and he takes it. He gets the Medal of Honor. He receives the Medal of Honor for the Battle of Piedmont. Again, that's in 1893. He lives about another 20 years, dying in 1912 at age 87. So there you have it, the story of a lesser-known Union general, an exile from Hungary, who comes to the United States and receives the Medal of Honor for his courage and gallantry. We'll see you next time on the trail.